You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
I feel like we don't give Morgan enough flowers for this damn intro because it gets me hyped every single time and I get lost in it that I forget to start the actual show. So definitely salute to Morgan because this intro is extremely amazing. That's dope. I feel like that's the only way to start the show, really.
I kind of forget I made it. Like I watch it and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool.
I wonder who did this.
Yeah.
Oh damn, this looks great. Whoever made that, that's awesome.
Yeah, nice little surprise. Like, damn,
Wow, they tweaked that nice.
Yeah, and I forget I'm on the podcast too. It's just like I'm watching the intro. I'm like, oh damn, I can't wait to see what these guys are talking about. You know what I mean? Like, shit.
Oh man. What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 165 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Zach Chavalella, Morgan Burkett, and we're here to talk about the fact that the last episode, the morning of, we spoke about the possibility of Gardner-Johnson just not being an Eagle because he didn't want to be. That night, he chose not to be. Apparently, he didn't choose. The Eagles actually pushed him away. A one-year deal worth up to $8 million, not guaranteed $8 million, like his agents try to say. I would ask you guys how you feel about it, but I think we're all on the same boat where it's kind of like, all right, cool. You know, it is what it is. Eagles gave you an option. You didn't want the option. You moved on. It is what it is, right? But he pulled the Jalen Rager on us with the Twitter show. A lot of emotions thrown out there. How do you guys feel about it?
I think the Howie quote kind of summed it up for me. Like I was feeling, still on the fence. Like, listen, there's a good reason, the Eagles wanted him back. He's a big part of the Super Bowl run, and I don't think we make it to the Super Bowl without him. That being said, there's the new stuff with the tweets and all that, and like it seems like maybe in the locker room there was. Yeah, I don't know because it seemed like he was a good locker room dude too. So I don't really know where this is coming from. Maybe it's part of the negotiations, but the quote I heard from Howie, I think it was yesterday, came out where it's just like it sounded like they sent him an offer early goings, and in the first couple of days they knew that it wasn't like Howie's like we weren't going to proceed, and that kind of sums it up. Is like it didn't really seem like he had any intention of coming back unless they were going to overpay for him. Again they offered him the same contract he got in Detroit. It sounds like. Just more years. And listen, I get it. Like maybe he bets on himself and gets a big contract, but we've seen so many players bet on themselves and then, not have a great season or, get injured or whatever it is. And I just feel like the Eagles are a great place to be for the next 3 years and he didn't want to be here. So, moving on.
Yeah, I just feel like the team has their sights set on guys who have their focus elsewhere than Chauncey Gardner did. Not that guys don't want to get paid. I mean, we saw that with Slay. Like that was a huge part of the offseason conversation was that Slay wanted to get paid. Nothing wrong with wanting to get paid, especially in this business. I mean, guys are putting their lives on the line sometimes. Like, yeah, absolutely, getting paid not a bad thing inherently, but it clearly seems as though Chauncey Gardner's motives were not in line with where Philadelphia wanted them to be. Almost like and when I say this is not a knock on Gardner's character inherently, just a character difference, not a good character, bad character, just a character difference. They're just looking for different things. They just act differently as a unit. So it's not that big of a deal to move on from him, if you ask me. He's a very talented player. It's a big loss, on the field. But I also just knowing Howie, that there's going to be something done to replace that. Maybe you don't replace it completely, or maybe you even find a better player to replace him with. That's the thing. Like, it's still so early in the offseason. Most of what the Eagles did last year hadn't even happened yet. There's still a lot of time between now and when you really get into camp and preseason and all that. So a lot can happen. There can be I mean, we haven't even hit the draft, and we all know what happened at the draft last year. Like,
Yes.
Stars can still be added. So, it is. I think it is a shame because I actually really like Chauncey Gardner. So I think. I mean, I don't like what he's been doing on Twitter as of late, but I like him a lot. I like his play style. He will be missed because he was a great player in Philadelphia for that 1 year. Minus the 6 games he was hurt. But that being said, it's not like the sky's falling because he's gone. So I think Howie did the right thing. I think he had the right attitude. Morgan, you mentioned his comments. I agree with you. I think it's very much just as simple as that. That was the case, and now we're just moving on.
Yeah.
If you're CJ, you got to read the room. And I was a little angry about it on the last podcast, right? Because to me, it was like, he was a pivotal piece in his defense. He meant a lot not only to the defense but to the team. He was part of a culture, and you saw the bonding, the bond with him and Nick Sirianni. And to me, that was a selling point to me if I'm CJ, right? Like, you had Greedy Williams, who said last year during training camp when the Browns practiced with the Eagles, he saw Sirianni talk up one of his players on the sideline that just had a bad day, and that meant a lot to Greedy. Like that made Greedy want to come to Philly. So if you're seeing veterans like a James Bradbury take less money to stay in Philly, you're seeing Darius Slade take less money to stay in Philly, why not just do the same? I mean, and again, you can't blame a man who wants to feed his family, right? He wants to feed his family. He wants to get the most money as possible. I get that. I completely get that. But at the same time, I feel like you have to be wise enough to not to put yourself in a bad position. You had a great opportunity here in Philly in a bigger market, a bigger football market, right? You're talking about sponsorships out the wazoo because Philly's very close to New York. Also, there's Atlantic City right there. Like, you have a lot of things going on with the Philadelphia Eagles players and sponsorships that you can make up that money on the side. But he's young. He could have, banked on a second contract with Philly in the long run. It didn't pan out. Now, is the sky falling like Zach mentioned? No, it's not. There's a possibility that Howie swings for the fences and gets a guy that's either equally as good as CJ or even better. They did make a move, right? They made a move to replace Marcus Epps. So they brought in Terrell Edmunds. I'm a big fan of this move. I know a lot of people are not high on him. A lot of people, for some reason, see him as a special teams piece opposed to a defensive piece. But I mean, Morgan, maybe you could test this more, but the guy was literally all over the Steelers defense. I mean, box safety, he was playing center field. He did literally everything, even cornerback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one major thing that we kind of have to consider is we don't actually know what this defense is going to look like. We make assumptions, based on, it being probably, Vic Fangio-esque. But, same with last year. This defense is going to ask their safeties to do a lot of things. That's kind of the one given is that, you'll see some one high shell, you'll see some two high shell. So the safeties will move around. So getting someone like Terrell Edmunds that can kind of play wherever you need him to, is he great if you put him in that single high look? Probably not. I'm sure the defensive coordinator and the DB's coach are going to collaborate so that doesn't happen very often. But it's not like he's still an NFL caliber starter wherever you put him. So getting a guy like that can rack up tackles, that got a good nose for the football, and immediately bringing someone in saying that I think in the past the when the team kind of doesn't address a need. Like for years, it was like, oh, we need a linebacker. Here you have a situation where a safety leaves and a safety comes in right away. And that's how you stay playoff caliber. That's how you stay Super Bowl caliber. Is he going to immediately replace CJ Gardner-Johnson? He's the same player? No. But he's a starter. And to be frank, in my opinion, is a better starter already than Marcus Epps was. I know Marcus Epps, came a long way. But the other thing I can see them doing, which we haven't really talked about, I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I could see them moving Greedy Williams in that safety position. Avonte Maddox is still on the roster. That wasn't a great look when he was a safety, but he's serviceable. So again, like the Eagles have options. There's still, I believe, a couple of safeties that would fill that role as well. They're free agents. Adrian Amos probably being the best fit. He's still available. That's an easy pickup, especially if he's willing to take a 1-year contract, and how he's kind of a master of that. Or signing one of those veteran deals where it's a couple of years and for kind of less money than most of these. It just seems like how he's constantly able to get those kind of deals done. And then there's all the options trading. Unfortunately, looking at the draft, it is mostly box safeties that are kind of available. but that's why you draft young and you get them to be that versatile players. You teach them, right? So not saying that there aren't options in the draft, but there are more of those natural box safeties. That's just kind of the way that the college game is played, where you need them to come down and tackle, and you're going to leave your corners on an island, but there's options. And so I think just bringing in
Kevin Byard.
Pardon?
Kevin Byard. You said there's options, and that's my only option right now.
Yeah, I mean, but even if you just bring in a veteran that's been around, Marcus Allen's still young. You got Eric Rowe, who was on the Eagles a long time ago. You have options there. If you just need a veteran to come in and play a couple games, even Rodney McLeod. If you can disguise these coverages the way that Jonathan Gannon was able to disguise Marcus Epps in coverage, you can still go to the Super Bowl, as we saw. So I think just bringing in a guy like that immediately answers some questions at the safety position and then filling in the gaps, it's a good look.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can, get by on that. And when I say get by for the Eagles, because of how talented the squad is, the quarterback is, the coaching staff is, yeah, you can even get to a Super Bowl that way. Is that going to be the way that they go about it? Maybe not. Eric Rowe is actually a name that I am growing on a little bit more. So I'm glad that you mentioned him, Morgan. But, when we're talking about some of the young options, you're right. There's like a dearth of box safeties in this draft. Do they look at, maybe in second round, third round, look at like a Sidney Brown? I think that's a name that you could see for someone who's a little bit more of a coverage expert and can thrive a little bit more in that single high coverage. But as far as Edmunds is concerned, I think you're right that, yes, he is a starter. There's no question he's a starter. He's been starting on a whether or not they've been the best defense, a tough defense in Pittsburgh. That's the one thing you can say about them every year. It's just any defense that's coached by Tomlin, it's a tough defense, right? So I have no issues with him. I think he's going to actually be a really good Eagle. I think he's going to be become a quick fan favorite even as well. The one thing that I would say is, I know that he could probably be passable in single high if you had to, if you're having him and Blankenship out there, for instance, like it's probably flip a coin, which one that you want back there. And we've seen Reed make some really great plays. But again, we got to remember the fact that he's young and he's still unproven. So we're not going to see that guaranteed this upcoming season. But when you're talking about some of the more veteran options, Brian, I know you love your guy out of Tennessee, Kevin, but there's also, I think, one name that hasn't been mentioned as much by us. I've heard it mentioned elsewhere, but Jeremy Chin could possibly be traded. And I understand that, he's like a complete, like almost like a gadget safety, right? So he's playing everywhere. He's playing, a lot of, sub package linebacker, he's all over the field. I still feel much better with him if he's going to play single high than say Edmunds, for instance. So if you want a guy who's going to be able to do it all, including that, I think that's more like a Chin type. And not to mention the fact that, listen, we all heard all the rumors of Jeremy Chin in the draft coming to Philadelphia. We remember that the people, or at least a good portion of the people who liked him in the draft, are certainly still here. Obviously, they picked Hurts, and we're very happy with how that worked out. But I wouldn't be surprised if, say, Jeremy Chin came back to Philadelphia, because he's also the type of player that Howie does look for in these trades. Guy who's, coming up on that free agency. Carolina, do they want to pay him? Do they not? We don't even know what direction they're taking. Are they going to go after Jackson? Or are they going to draft their quarterback this year? We have no idea, right? So it's a lot of uncertainty there. So I think that's one player that we can definitely look out for. Kevin, I don't know why the last name is expected. It's Bynard. What?
Byard.
It's Byard? Okay, I remember saying Byard for the long. I've been adding a little flavor to it. Byard everywhere I go. You seen Byard play?
Very, very, very French. Very French.
He's got that dog in him.
And like he would be great. Like that is the one thing. Like I think there may not be a ton of options in the draft, but I think there still are options. And then Morgan, finally, like what you said about the veterans who are still out there, like, yeah, I think there definitely are some names. And I'm going to come back to Eric Rowe for a minute. I mean, if we're talking about coverage safeties, like I have more faith in Eric Rowe as a coverage safety than I think I do on any current safety on this Eagles roster. So I would feel fine with him coming in. Would I feel great? No. but you're not going to have to spend a lot to bring him on in. And at that point, you're still being able to use resources elsewhere. So it's kind of like a win-win in that sense, where you're bringing in a guy who you feel better about than the guys you have in-house. You don't have to spend too much. And then you can just spend more money on defensive line, getting a backup tackle in case, on the O-line, bringing in Ezekiel Elliott. We'll just throw out random stuff out there, like whatever. And I'm not an Elliott guy, but whatever, people want to do, like there's going to be options. And as we all know, Howie Roseman loves his optionality.
So quick question. I mean, and again, I've never been big on defense, right? So I don't, I can pick up when I can pick up, but I can't, I can't put down a lot of it. In what Vic Fangio's defense is going to look like here in Philly, right? Do the Eagles need a center fielder like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or do they need more of like a Malcolm Jenkins, where it's kind of like jack of all trades and just kind of literally everywhere at times?
I mean, the correct answer to that is both. So the Vic Fangio defense, the biggest thing the biggest change that I think is, we kind of saw it last year in a bit of a deformed way, but I think the Eagles are on their way to transitioning to a 3-4. I think that's the biggest change you're going to see. It's just, it's kind of been the writing on the wall for a couple of years. And then they hire, a coach from a tree. Vic Fangio is famous for his 3-4 defenses, but it's a different look. So it'll be overs, it'll be unders, you'll have a walk down linebacker. So that's Hassan Reddick, right? So it's gonna look similar to what it looked like last year. It's not gonna be a traditional 3-4, but they're gonna move people around. They're gonna give you different fronts. They're gonna disguise stuff, and then what they're gonna do is they're gonna ask their safeties again to be part of that disguise. So you're gonna get a single high look, and then they're gonna drop into 2 shell. You're going to get 2 high safeties. That's going to drop into 1 shot. So they really try and give a lot of looks. They don't do a whole lot from those looks. It's fairly simple. So it is a lot of what we saw from Gannon. It's just going to have a different it's going to be a different font, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, okay. We're going to see a lot of that disguising. I don't think we're going to see quite as much of the hopefully not as much as the loose zone. I think that, it is a characteristic of this defense, but I'm praying that doesn't happen, that we kind of transition. But so, like, for better or for worse, it's going to be very similar, but I think just more so. So all those disguises, all the moving around, all the giving different looks, we're going to see a lot more of that. So having that box safety is really important. Having someone that can play high is really important. If that's the same player, fantastic. And I think the defense kind of lives and breathes off that. I don't know that player is on the roster, but you can substitute that for 2 guys that can kind of give you both looks. So Reed Blankenship, again, a guy that we kind of just glossed over, gives you that. Like, he's surprisingly good against the run, will come down and make a tackle, but also giving you a little bit.
I'm wondering too, like, isn't Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmunds kind of like just the same kind of style player?
I think that's what they're hoping for. I think what they're hoping for is that these guys can give you a bit of both. You don't need either of them to be all-star caliber. What you do need is that they're both very solid starters. And then you're just hoping that you can create pressure up front, which the Eagles have done and will continue to do.
Well, let's not underrate the fact, of what Edmunds can also bring to Blankenship as well. I mean, to have a guy who you hope Blankenship can kind of grow in the mold of, be able to have Blankenship study and, learn from him, see what he does right, what he does wrong, and basically grow under that guy. And hopefully Edmunds kind of takes him under his wing. It's tough in football, right? Especially with some of these positions. Like, it's not always that you see guys taking guys under their wing, because at the same time, it's always like, hey, this guy's kind of possibly gunning for my job. But, you still hope, I think, that you have Blankenship, learn a little bit under Edmunds as far as the little finer aspects of, the technique and knocking off some of that young player rust a little bit sooner. So I definitely agree. Like, having both of those guys, like, is absolutely huge. My sole concern still, and basically, as you said, Morgan, you do need both, but I just still don't know that there is that guy who can provide that high coverage, and especially if you're going to go in a 2 high shell, like, it's really tough if you don't have at least one guy who's quality.
That's my concern. So. That's definitely my concern, because looking at Edmunds and looking at his film, right? So with Edmunds, he had Micah Fitzpatrick behind him playing center field, and Edmunds just had to cover the second tier of the defense, and Minka was flying everywhere else. We don't have that right now, right? And ideally, yes, the offseason is very young. Are we concerned about that? No, because something's going to happen, right? But my thing is, like, I think at this point, Reed Blankenship, for his progression and for his development, it's best to be the third option, right? You need a guy that's going to be swinging around in the outfield for this team that's going to be able to make plays deep, because at the end of the day, they want to stop the explosive plays. They want to keep everything below the knees per se. I just feel like a move has to be coming, whether it's Byard, whether it's Chen. Chen, I wasn't even thinking about, and I think that's a great option, honestly. He's young, and you could definitely like just milk that for what it's worth at this point. So to say, like the Eagles are better off with CJ, I wouldn't say so much. I am a little, I guess it's a little bittersweet because we all fell in love with the dynamic that he brought to this team, the edge that he brought to this team. But it just feels like there's a home run swing coming at some point. It's too unhowy like for it not to happen. Whether it's Jeffrey Simmons, which a lot of people are shooting for, or a Kevin Byard or Jeremy Chin, or some secret player out there like Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, I mean, and Antoine Winfield Jr. is definitely another possibility. Again, we're talking about young guys who, the teams may be going in a different direction than they initially thought they were going to be. They may not want to re-sign their guys. Like there's definitely options. Now, as far as whether or not this team would be better with or without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, like it's kind of like a twofold question, because like, would he be the best safety on this roster if he were here? I think, yeah, that's an obvious yes, but that's not necessarily the question. Like you said, now there's so much, again, I'm going to use the word optionality. You don't have that $6.5 million, hanging over the books. You have that money that you can spend elsewhere. You have that money you can even use towards bringing a guy over in a trade. And there's going to be options. I think another guy to look out for possibly is, maybe not the exact, personnel fit as far as what we've decided that they need, but just from a talent standpoint, like if Green Bay, I want to see what Green Bay does between now and the start of the season, because I don't even know what's going. Obviously, they're hanging up on that draft pick is the issue with trading Aaron Rodgers right now. But once Rodgers is moved, if they do kind of lean into a rebuild, or they try and assume that Jordan Love can just go over from the start, because that could also depend on whether or not Darnell Savage is available. And so like there's literally guys on almost every team that you could look down and say, hey, is there an opportunity here to bring this guy in to even a Grant Delpit in Cleveland, like there's guys left and right that you can basically look at and say like, hey, is there an opportunity, to bring in one of these guys who's possibly not part of the plan of the team in their future. So that's what Harry does. That's his MO. I think the other guy that people might, kind of love if he made it over, but I don't think it's going to happen, is like even a Budda Baker, who's going to be, he's not a club option after the year. The Arizona Cardinals are like in the gutter. So it's like, is he going to be available? I think he may end up being available by the deadline, probably not heading to Philadelphia. But you just never know with Howie. I mean, I won't say no one saw AJ Brown coming, but no one really knew how legitimate the chances were of actually getting AJ Brown until it happened. I think it's more fair to say. So really anything can happen, especially between now and the draft. So it's going to be really exciting to see what happens between now and then. And draft night, I mean, listen, 2 first-round picks. We're coming off the year with the AJ Brown trade. It's going to be an exciting first day of the draft, and I just can't wait for it.
Something's going to happen. Like there's no way something doesn't happen, whether they're trading up or whether they end up trading up from 30, which I feel like nobody's talked about. Like, what if the Eagles stay put at 10, trade up from 30 to get to 13 or 14 to take a cornerback or take a Bijan Robinson? Like Zach said, like it's going to be a very exciting time. Like Phil in our chat just said, the offseason is a marathon, not a sprint. So there's a lot, there's a lot of meat on the bone left in this offseason before the Eagles actually have a final roster. They traded for CJ last August, so it's not to be concerned right now. But a move that is intriguing enough to me, right? Nicholas Morrow, coming from the Chicago Bears to the Eagles, another 1-year deal, which Howie has made a killing off these 1-year deals. It feels like the Eagles are operating with such intelligence this offseason that it's astonishing. I mean, they're playing with smart money and getting ready for that Jalen Hurts contract extension. But Morrow, it seems like a perfect replacement for T.J. Edwards, and he's young. I think he'll fit the Kobe team very well. I mean, what do you guys feel like? What do you guys feel about Nicholas Morrow?
Yeah, I mean, great fit. Even just listening to his interview, obviously, you know, we're not Bears fans, so we probably haven't heard many interviews before he came to Philly. But just a professional, man. Like he gives me the same kind of energy that TJ Edwards gives you. He's just like, you know, a blue collar kind of linebacker. It's what you need, right? You know, a linebacker decided the Super Bowl as well, in like a similar a similar manner. So, you know, you need those guys that are going to rack up tackles that might have that upside to make a play. It'll be interesting to me how they envision him and Nakobe Dean playing beside each other. What I think is that he'll be your Mac, your middle linebacker, and then Nakobe Dean will be your Will. But who knows? And then they're kind of interchangeable. You know, I think obviously Nakobe Dean's a bit more athletic, but it's a good problem to have again, where you have kind of two interchangeable guys. They can go either way with it. Obviously, Hassan Reddick's going to be your Sam and continue to kind of blitz from depth from that position or walk up. But really interesting kind of linebacker room. I still think they might add to it in the draft. Obviously not in the first round, but second or third round, there's some really talented linebackers that will be available. And shoot, if you get one that falls to you at 32, one of these first round guys, it's going to be, in general, like that first round is going to be really interesting because you have a draft where, you know, potentially you have 5 quarterbacks that could go in the first 15 picks. So that always pushes talent down the board. And so that if you're the Eagles sitting at 10, that's a great problem to have, is you might get a steal here. And even at 30, you know, you might get someone that kind of trickles through. You know, we've seen how many value picks, you know, at 30, 31, 32, where they probably were mid-round talent. And then whoever the playoff team or the Super Bowl teams were just kind of scoop up talent and the rich get richer. So Eagles are in 2 really good positions for this draft. So feel really good about the linebacker position as it stands. I still think they could stand to add someone, especially if they're transitioning to more of like a 3-4 look. They need that complementary kind of inside guy, or if they bump Nakobe Dean inside, that will linebacker. But it's again, another problem where, like, I think in the past you've had someone walk out and you don't have an immediate solution. And then here Howie is just going, okay, we're not taking any steps back. We're just adding another piece. And like, that's just how to build a perennial contender, is just solving. Like, you know, you see Kansas City let Orlando Brown walk out the door. Is anyone worried that they won't address that problem at some point? Not really, right? That's how you build a championship contender.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. And, you know, to kind of address these things again in like the kind of order of operations. So I want to bring like focus back to specifically like Nick Morrow. Like, I mean, dude, I'm excited. Like I'm straight up excited. This dude, he had 16 tackles last year. But you know what I'm really excited about? Do you know what his missed tackle percentage was last season? Anyone give me just a round figure? Anyone have a shot in the dark?
2%.
Okay, well, it was 5. Okay, but that's still an improvement. All right, like, guys are jackasses, you know. But no, it was still really good.
I mean, me and Brian, that's what we expect of, you know, Philly linebacker.
Yeah, it's a high standard, bro.
When he comes to Philly, it'll be 2. Okay, but you know, he's improved it every year. It was like 17 his rookie year, 12, 8, and then now last year, his 4th year, he's down to 5, 4.9 to be specific. Like he's improving each and every year, and that's the kind of thing that you like to see out of, especially a younger player. So to see him now kind of growing into that veteran role, I think this is a guy who he's going to be just a real kind of sure presence, real solid presence in the middle of the Eagles defense there. So I'm excited to have him. I do agree, Morgan. I do think they're going to get a linebacker in the draft, but I'm thinking like, you know, I think they're going to acquire more picks than they currently have. Yeah. Just let's get that out of the way. Like that should be a foregone conclusion. They're at least going to reallocate, right? So they're going to get some lower picks. So come 4th, 5th, 6th round, yeah, I think they are going to pick a linebacker somewhere right around there. But Dean and Morrow for now, I think that's pretty good for the foreseeable future, being this upcoming season. So I'm ready to see what he has to bring to the table. I can't wait to see what Nakobe Dean has to bring to the table because, I mean, that's honestly, it's like getting it being conservative, like a 2nd round pick that's about to play for the first time this year. Like, you know, he had some action last year, but he just wasn't that role that a lot of people were not even expecting. Because I feel like everyone really knew he was going to take a minute, but even still, it was like we were thinking that he was possibly going to like kind of take over at some point last year. That just never really happened. They didn't really give him the opportunity to. He didn't seize the opportunity, whatever you want to call it. It's just they went with Edwards and they went with Kaiser White for the majority of it. They got them to a Super Bowl, so it clearly worked out. But now it's the time for Dean to step up with both of those guys gone. So I can't wait to see what the linebackers bring going forward into this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely been exciting to see how this defense pans out when at the end of it all, right? When all the final pieces are in the roster, when we have our final 53, it's gonna be interesting to see what Sean Desai pulls off. Mm-hmm. Segueing away from defense into offense, right? So we spoke in the last podcast about Rashad Penny, Eagles signing him, but two things came up throughout the week, right? So we have Ezekiel Elliott saying that he's interested in the Jets, the Bengals, and the Eagles. Eagles come out and say they're very happy with the running back room, which a lot of people, we get. You sign Rashad Penny, you're playing a political role, you don't want Zeke, cool. But then Nick speaks today, and he talks about very highly about Trey Sermon, who we didn't see none of last year. Mm-hmm. And he said Trey Sermon was a guy that we just couldn't get touches for, which is understandable because Miles Sanders was the guy. But he's like, this guy has the potential to be great, which speaks volumes as to, why the Eagles are so content with having Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, Trey Sermon, and now Rashad Penny. First and foremost, what are your opinions on Zeke? And then secondly, what are your, are you hopeful for the Sermon experiment to be something, or is it just kind of just smoke? I mean, to me, I'm not a big fan of bringing Zeke just because I feel like who needs five? Was it 5 running? That'll be 5 running backs. Like, we don't need that many running backs to lose a younger running back for older one. But how do you guys feel about it?
I mean, for me, it really depends on the contract. I feel like it is a bit of a cop-out, but it depends. If the money's green, then bring him in, right? It can't hurt. Is he a better running back than Boston Scott at this point in his career? Yes. I think that the major selling point for me on Zeke is just how good he is as a pass blocker. And that's something the Eagles really haven't had in their running back committee in a couple of years. And that's something that, it didn't really affect him last year, but I'm sure kind of in the game planning, made some decisions before the game started for them that they had to kind of work around some people. Again, Miles Sanders improved, but he's never going to be a top-end pass blocker. Same with Kenny Gainwell, same with Boston Scott. Trey Sermon, was again in San Francisco, they weren't really that drop back passing team. The Eagles aren't going to be that either. We didn't see much of him last year. Did he improve? His path blocking, I don't think it was terrible. But again, bringing in a guy like Zeke who has that pedigree, who has that experience, it's never a bad thing. It's just you don't want to sink a lot of money into him at this point in his career. He's probably not going to play a full season for you. He is going to come into a committee. So I'm not against signing him, but within reason. The other thing I really like about him is because the running back room is so young, that experience would help. I understand they haven't been that successful in the playoffs, but he's got them there plenty of times and sometimes literally on his own. So he does have that experience. So again, if it's a short, 1-year contract for, a veteran deal where it's I don't even know what running back the market for a veteran running back is right now, but similar to what they're bringing in, the other veterans on the team, that $6 to $8 million range. Shit, we brought in some for under $2 million, so who knows, right? How we might be able to neg him down, but if the money's right, I'm all for it. Who cares? He's still a better running back than Boston Scott. Kenny Gainwell still developing. He's probably almost guaranteed a better running back than Trey Sermon, just maybe not with the athletic upside at this point in his career. Trey Sermon, on the other hand, I mean, you love to hear that from your coach. Do I expect a lot of him? I'm not certain. I still think it's going to be Kenny Gainwell as your lead back, which I'm excited for, man. He really took off in the playoffs. He looked good. He looked decisive. That's the big thing. That's what you want to do running backs is, especially in this offense, is one cut and go. And that was something that Miles Sanders kind of struggled with, right? And so, I'm excited for Kenny Gainwell. If Trey Sermon plays a role, fantastic. If not, there'll be plenty of veterans you can pick up during the season. Who knows? They might add a rookie in the draft. So I'm completely content with the running back room. If they have an opportunity to add Zeke, do it. And Trey Sermon, if he can play a significant role, fantastic. So that's a good position to be in.
So I'm not the biggest fan of Ezekiel Elliott, and that's not just because he was a Cowboy. That's not just because of the pot that he hops in. It's not any of that. It's
because of the crop top. Say it.
Well, I hate the crop top, man. Like honestly, like I do really hate the crop top. I do worry about his ability outside of short yardage situations. And if you're telling me that we're going to be able just to run him purely in short yardage situations, and you're using him as a pass blocker, Morgan, as you pointed out, like that's one thing. But if you're going to have to rely on him more, like let's say that they run into this season with Zeke, Scott, Penny, and who is not a guarantee to make the roster come the season, might I add, and Kenny Gainwell, right? Let's say Kenny Gainwell doesn't take that leap that we expect him to, right? Then at that point, Zeke becomes the favorite to become the bell cow, as it were, but you're going to have a committee, obviously. I don't know how long you can count on him, to produce consistently. I don't know how much you can expect him to get more than, say, those chunk plays. Like he looked pretty bad last year, if you ask me. That being said, the Cowboys O-line was a lot worse than the Eagles O-line this year. So that is a factor, I will admit. In the end, I'm probably floating around. If you can get him for 3 or under on a 1-year deal, right? So, and I think that's realistic because if you look at some of the backs you signed, Devin Singletary got $2.75 million to go to Houston, right? So they probably paid him actually a little bit more to get him to come to Houston. I'm thinking there were other teams that probably offered a little less and a little bit of a better opportunity, but that's just speculation. If you look at a guy like Damian Harris, he took 1.77. Matt Breida got 1.4. And if you look at a guy like James Robinson, he took $2 million over 2 years. So it's four total, 2 in each year, right? So I think that you can get a guy, especially who wants to come to Philadelphia. And I think he may want to come to Philadelphia even more than Cincinnati because I think the kind of vengeance against Dallas does play a role with Zeke. I think he's the type, and that's honestly a good thing that he's the type who would want to have that chip on his shoulder, especially at running back. I do like that in theory, if he is truly that person, I think that he is. So if you can get him on 2.5, 2 3/4, like something like that on a 1-year deal, which I think is possible, then I'm okay with it. And then, like I say, going back to Rashad Penny, like he could get hurt. Like I hate to say this is literally just it, but like one off-season injury, and you're probably looking at him. He's only got $600,000 guaranteed on the year. That's less than Boston Scott. Like this is a guy who he may not perform at the level that the Eagles were expecting, or again, something may come up that means he can't be eligible to play. I don't even want to say the word around him because he's been hurt so much in his career. But like literally any of these things are possible, and you can be looking at a guy who doesn't make the roster. Like, and we haven't even gotten to Trey Sermon yet. A guy who, Howie said some good things about, and I like Trey Sermon, but even in this fictitious scenario where Zeke is involved, I do think Trey Sermon is that fifth guy. Like, that's the thing. Like, he's so far back in that rotation. Like, unless he truly proves something as a power back, and at that point, I'm not even so sure that you go after Zeke. If Sermon has proven that he can actually handle that load, then I don't know what future there is for him in Philadelphia. But I am happy that Howie at least is talking high of him. I would like him to get a shot. It's one of those things where it probably won't make a world of difference what direction they end up actually going with. I don't think it's really. And then we haven't even factored in the possibility of drafting one of these running backs too. I mean, like, how many running backs are you going to carry on this roster, right? So if they do go with a Bijan Robinson, or they like the second round guy too. What's the Alabama back? What's his name?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
They are a fan of Gibbs as well. So
that boy has some quick feet, man.
I really like
feet.
the pick guy, Israel Bonkana.
Oh yeah, and then you got Tank Bigsby, you got Tajay Spear. Like there's a lot of good backs sprinkled out in here. Yeah, for sure. Like there's options, So what direction are they going to go? I don't know, but I really don't think that road leads to Trey Sermon. It's hard to see that being the eventuality of the situation.
Sermon reminds me of a more physical Josh Adams. I think that's what he reminds me of.
Who does?
Josh Adams?
Yeah.
No, not Josh Adams. The other name.
Trey Sermon.
Trey Sermon. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, and I do see that. Yeah, and a more physical Josh Adams, like, yeah, I like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, if you can bring in, this is where I'm actually going to talk Zeke up. Like, if you can bring in a guy who, has that almost in a sense like pedigree, because there is certain value to the experience that Zeke would bring into the situation. On top of that, like you mentioned, that pass blocking ability is huge. That's not necessarily Sermon's strong suit. And so that should be a factor, I think, because we should be looking at backs who not only can run, like we got to be looking at backs who can, you don't need them all to be all around backs, but you need at least specialists, guys who can pass block, guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield, guys who can run up the gut, split it out to the seams. Like you need guys who can, you need a variety, especially if you're running in a committee of guys who do more than the same thing. And I think that's the danger that they're going to potentially find themselves in if they were to say bring on Zeke and Sermon and Kenny Gainwell. Like, you have a guy who can pass block, yes, in Zeke, but that's really the only other characteristic. Like, if you look at Gainwell, Zeke, and Trey Sermon as a runner, they're all guys who've been picking up chunk plays as of late. At best, Trey Sermon hasn't even been hitting the field, but theoretically he'd be hitting chunk plays and short yardage situations. So you need a guy who, and you hope that Rashad Penny can be that guy who can like burst through. And I really hope that he can be. I think that he can be if he stays healthy. Right. But it'd just be nice to have a little more variety out of the backfield.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. And I do want to keep talking about running back just for a little bit, but really quick, so Jeffrey Lurie just closed his press conference saying that this is the season that they will introduce the classic Kelly Green uniforms.
Hell yeah!
So it's coming back, and it's actually going to be an alternate. So I love the Kelly Green. I know a lot of people compare the Kelly Green to the losing record and losing days of Philly, which I feel like is unfair.
The second the Jalen Hurts Kelly Green jersey hits Fanatics, it will be sold out.
Yeah. Dude,
so
that's me on back order to December.
Get on it now, like ASAP. Literally the first second you can.
What I'm excited for is the first Eagle to pick number 0, and then getting that in Kelly Green. That's going.
For sure, that'd be sick.
That would be nice. But just to pay back off running backs really quick, right? So we're talking about this running back by committee where we don't like. I feel like with Miles we had that special back, right? We had the main guy, the face of the running backs. Rashad Penny is great upside, but like Zach mentioned, like he has to stay healthy. That's very key. Like, and that's something he has not been able to do. Kenneth Gainwell, we saw what he could do in the playoffs, but is he your number one kind of guy? Boston Scott is Boston Scott. He's serviceable, right? It's not the guy you want to lean on back-to-back games. Trey Sermon, no idea what he can bring. Should Philly look for that guy in this draft? I mean, should Philly? Like, I'm in the mindset like, hey, if you're rebuilding your defense, overpower your offense. Make your offense just insufferable to defenses. Like, just bring that unit that would be unstoppable. And I feel like I wouldn't say this high, right? But I feel like Bijan Robinson would be great in Philly just for the simple fact that you're overpowering your offense. You're making defenses really suffer when they face you. At 10 overall, I don't think so. But do you guys feel like it's a need going forward? Like, if this team is going to be competing going forward like that, should they have a main back behind Jalen Hurts?
I mean, unfortunately, and I hate the way that the league is gone because I do love a good running game, but I don't think first round running back is a need for any team ever. I just think that's like unless they're a generational back like Saquon. Even still, you see like the Giants, like they can lean on Saquon, but they needed other pieces. They needed that defense to be great. So, running backs just can't change your team the way that other positions can in the first round. So I don't think it's a need. I think it's a want, and I think it's kind of that maybe that piece that takes you over the top. But I think you're right, Brian. I think 10's a bit too rich. But like I said earlier, like they're in a great position where they could trade back and have him fall, and then it kind of makes sense. I mean, shoot, if he's available at 30, I think that's a long conversation. I think that's great value, regardless of what position he is, to get a guy who's probably a top 15 talent, top 10 talent, regardless of position, at 30. So I think if he falls that far, great. I think some teams are gonna just want that because there's something about teams with losing records that want to get a running back and think that they can build that way. There's also like teams like Atlanta Teams like Pittsburgh, who obviously have Dave Najee, but teams like this, they kind of like add that running back to the young quarterback, where they can kind of get that synergy and stuff like that. So it happens a lot. So I think one of these teams with like a quarterback that they already feel kind of good about, you saw with the Jags adding ETN, like it's very common for these teams like that have that young quarterback to add that running back. So I think he's a more value to those kind of teams than the Eagles. But if he falls, man, that's great value. That being said, I do think there are running backs that are available in the third round that will fill the role. Like the Eagles don't need a number one running back. They would need someone that can fit into the rotation, and there are plenty of those in the third round. It's not as deep of a class as years past. So we'll see. Like maybe teams will leap at the running backs, but it just hasn't happened. Like teams don't value running backs the way they used to. So the Eagles should be able to scoop someone up in the third round that fits what they need. As much as I do want Bijan.
I mean, I think in general, like that's all, very, very sensible. I'm not a big, I do love running backs. I love what they bring to the game. I'm not a big drafting running backs in the first round kind of person. I think from everything that I've heard, from everything that I've watched, that Bijan is on that Saquon Zeke level. I've even heard some people say that he is even an even better prospect. Whether or not that's true, we'll find out. I think he would be phenomenal in Philadelphia, but I have to agree that drafting a running back at 10 is, especially for a team that has as many. Like, listen, we were just in the Super Bowl, and I think that we're going to be back, in or around that area, but there's still holes on this Eagles roster. Like, it would just be irresponsible to pick him back at 10. Now, if he falls to 30, again, that is the difference. I don't think he falls past 26 with Dallas. Like, that is the thing where, like, I don't want to say I'm worried, but I guess what I'm worried is he falls to 25 or even 24, and we try and call up Jacksonville, and we leapfrog the Cowboys, give up assets to leapfrog the Cowboys for Robinson, which, again, at the end of the day, wouldn't be the worst thing because he's a very spectacularly talented back, and he'd be a great running back in Philadelphia for 5 years at most, 4 or 5 years, depending on if they want to pick up the option. Like, there's just not that long-term benefit there. And the fact that Philadelphia does work with a back by committee approach, it seems almost kind of a waste. So, by going after one of these guys, a little bit later in the draft, like, I think that's probably the better approach for Philadelphia. It would be nice if Dallas didn't get a chance to draft him just because of the regular season implications. I'm not worried about Dallas heading into the postseason, but who knows? Under this new defense and, with the Eagles having their new look defensive line, maybe it won't be that big of an issue, especially with Dallas's O-line kind of falling apart. But I mean, in general, I'm also not a running back in the first round guy unless you're like Kansas City. Like, if you're Kansas City, I wouldn't hate drafting a running back in the first round because you're already near that 30th pick. They tried it before. It didn't work out, obviously. But for a guy like this, like a generational talent, it's obviously different. But it's by and large, it's a no for me.
It reminds me of the Colts picking up Jonathan Taylor. That's what it reminds me.
For sure.
Like it fits. It makes a lot of sense. They were like better team for sure. And now you're kind of seeing the outcome where that probably should have been spent on a different position. Maybe they could have traded back on more assets, like all that. Like it would be great, but you have to kind of visualize it in terms of what you're sacrificing.
Well, the other thing too, and you see this, like, so I mentioned Kansas City as a team that I could see, but you also see them investing in all the offensive line, and they've done through Andy Reid, like obviously building through the trenches as part of their philosophy as well. But getting that offensive line talent, I think, is also something that you see quite often. And Buffalo would be another team that I would say, even though they just picked up Harris, they got Naheem Hines at the trade deadline last year. They have James Cook, who I think is going to be a contributor this year. In theory, you plug him into that offense in Buffalo, and I'm talking about Bijan Robinson, huge offensive potential right there. Sure. But that being said, can you really say that they're not better off, either building onto their secondary or adding another player in the trenches? Like, really, when you come down to it, it's just typically more valuable to get one of those spots and then in the second round. Because again, like there's going to be guys in the second round, in the third round, in the fourth round. Like that's just it. Every year there's backs like that you can work with, and if you build your offensive line up, then these backs are going to look even better. That's the other thing that Philadelphia has proven time and time and time again. So it's not likely for me. I'd love to see it. It'd be totally sick to have him in Philly. He'd be the best running back easily that we've had since Shady, if not even better. But it's just, I don't think it's going to happen. And I kind of hope it doesn't. And it's nothing against him. It's just that there's so many other needs.
Yeah, the value's not there, and I completely get that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Brian seems sad. We just crushed his hopes and dreams ago and by John.
Well, Brian, I have good news for you because the New York Giants pick ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles, and you can get the Robinson-Saquon tandem.
Ooh, I love
and you
that.
just run all over the league.
I'm actually
bench Daniel Jones, just put fucking run Wildcat at that point.
Yeah, all
put
day
Daniel
long,
Jones
right?
in at running back, and you got a three-headed monster.
There you go.
I'm actually a bigger fan of Gibbs than I am of Robinson. I feel like Gibbs fits the Philly mold better. You get a receiving back at him, right? You have Kenneth Gainwell, who showed he could be receiving back in the playoffs. So to have Gibbs alongside that, you kind of destroy the need for a Boston Scott, right? And you also have a player you could develop over the next 4 years with Jalen Hurts, with Kenneth Gainwell, and whoever the third guy is. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited about the Kelly Green. That got me pumped up already. I got Fanatics loaded on my computer just in case.
You know what? The thing is, what's so great about it? Like, listen, I'll tell you. First and foremost, my choice would be to go get a Jalen Hurts and Kelly Green, but I got plenty of options if that goes by. We got a Jason Kelsey, we got a Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. I mean, we got guys.
That's six.
Chris is going to get. Chris is absolutely going to get himself a Landon Dickerson. You know that right now.
Yeah,
there's guys all over
the Kobe Dean, baby.
The Kobe Dean zero.
Darius Slay. I mean, there's guys all over that you can get just amazing Kelly Green jerseys of. So I'm just pumped for it, man. I'm going to spend so much money. My wife's going to kill me, but it is what it is, and it's going to be great.
Do you know
it's a beautiful
just
thing.
The Kelly Green, or are they doing the white alternate as well, like the white throwback?
It just said Kelly Green as an alternate, so I think they're going to go with that. I think they should just go revamp the jerseys, honestly.
It might be an unpopular opinion, but I like the all white with the Kelly Green is one of my favorites of all time.
Those are crisp.
It is nice. It is nice.
So clean.
I think they should go back to Kelly Green, just revamp the jerseys, modernize it, and then have the midnight green as the alternate.
I mean, they may see how this works out and then maybe have like a 10-year plan to phase out the midnight green, some kind of like that. But I don't think it's off the table. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Teams tend to do that after championships, like a couple years after championships, like the Falcons. Like, I don't know why that is, but the Falcons, the Jaguars, for some reason, because I think like teams go to the playoffs, they get a lot of jersey sales, and then they make sure you don't have that jersey the next year. So I think you could be on something, Brian. I think you might see that in the next little bit.
I would love it, man. I would definitely love it. But yeah, I mean, we gave everybody our spiel about the recent signings, the recent departure of CJGJ, what it means for Philly. Also, an outlook of what the running back room looks like, right? Over the next couple of weeks, I know we're gonna have a couple guests on. We're also gonna get back to our mock drafts, right? Draft Network finally got theirs up and running. I think Zach and I have been trying to work out with the bugs of it.
yeah, you can say.
But shout out to Draft Network, right? Because they always had a crispy product. But we'll definitely do some mock drafts upcoming, and we'll get the ball rolling. I mean, it's gonna be a very exciting time in PSN. You know, the draft is coming up. You know, something special is coming up next week as well. But yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's a good time. Good time.
It feels good. It feels good to be Eagles fan, right? I mean, like this team's not
good time to be an Eagles fan. Good time to be a PSN fan. You know, it's a good time all around right now.
It felt nice to like do draft research and already have some write-ups. Like usually we start draft research like in early February, and there's like nothing, and you're just like trolling through film, and like, oh fuck, like what this guy good at? And like now there's like a little bit of write-up, so now I can now there's film available. Now there's cut-ups available. Got to watch my team in a Super Bowl, and now it's just like that much easier. It's like, it's a win-win. I love that.
It's definitely a win-win. But yeah, Shout out to the 18 of you guys that just showed up to the end of the podcast. Oh, we appreciate all you guys. We appreciate all your support. We're trying our best to keep a schedule to Tuesdays, right? I think Zach and Eric and I got a little tempted with the weekend brunch special, which Morgan, you missed it because it was phenomenal. It was great. I mean,
which may come back. You cannot promise it will not come back.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I know Eric was buzzing about it. But we'll try to keep announcements going. And then I do have a Jalen Hurts card that we gotta get a giveaway going for. It's a rookie card. So maybe we'll post that up on what's today? Today's Tuesday. If we do it Friday, that means I can ship it out by Monday we'll announce it on the weekend. And we'll announce the winner on the podcast this time and post it on Twitter.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, let's do that, right? So definitely stay tuned to our Twitter. Make sure you guys are following our Twitter. Make sure you guys are following Zach. Make sure you guys are following Morgan. Zach also does the Baseline Scoop, following everything Sixers. This guy is the encyclopedia of the Philadelphia 76ers. I actually have Zach's alerts on for notifications. So every time he tweets, it pops on my phone.
I'm honored.
And I love Morgan. Morgan's just Morgan.
Thank you.
Morgan is just Morgan.
You can have my alerts on for Twitter, and
it'll never pop up.
It'll never go.
But
I do
Morgan
my best.
you didn't even have Twitter for your first 4 years of PSN, right? Yeah.
I had to push him to get Twitter. But
Yeah.
even so, like when Morgan scoops on defense, I can listen to Morgan talk about defense all day long.
For
Like the
sure.
guy loves
Yeah.
defense more than anything anybody ever met in my life. So definitely stay tuned for what this offseason is going to bring. We're going to have guests. We're going to have giveaways. And we're always going to have a fresh Baldy on the podcast. But on the other hand,
Little note to yourself, Ryan. That's crazy, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's all right.
oh God, I'm tired, man. I'm so tired.
Fresh baldy.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hey, but I'm Brian Cameron alongside Zach Travalella, Morgan Burkett. We're flipping the birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir.